All right, guys, let's talk about market failure from information gaps. So, suppose that I have a market and I think that the amount that I benefit from a good is here. However, I know, well, I don't know rather, that actually this good is less good for me than I think it is. So maybe I'm a smoker and I don't fully appreciate the costs of smoking. So the amount of benefit that I actually get is lower than my demand. And this is a demerit good because I'm I'm overvaluing it. It's got less merit than I think it does. And therefore my demand is inflated. So the socially optimal amount is actually or the optimal amount even for me is down here. But I'm going to trade up here because I think this good is better for me than it is. And so that's a problem. And that's failure due to information gaps. I'm overvaluing it, so I'm buying more of it than is actually good for me. Now, what's the answer? Well, one thing I could do is I could try and plonk a tax and try and target this difference to basically try and target the gap between how much I'm willing to spend on it, but how much it actually benefits me. That's one thing I can try to do to deal with this problem. Um, Another thing is I can try and close the information gap, so I can do a public information scheme to try and deal with the problem. And typically, they're reasonably low cost because it doesn't actually cost that much money to record some videos saying some stuff and then plaster them on the TV and around plaster them up on screens and whatnot. There was one public information campaign in Scotland to get people using the railways a lot more. It cost £55,000 and it increased usage of the railways by 12 percentage points. So if you really care about getting railway usage up, then great. That's pretty good going, right? And like in the grand scheme of things, 55 grand is not that much. Anyway, so when you're thinking on the scale of a whole government with millions of people in it, and that's like less than two average salaries. Anyhow, this problem can also exist in the case of goods being better for people than they realize. So maybe people just don't truly appreciate just how good exercise is for them. So maybe their demand is down here, but the actual marginal benefit to you of buying sports gear is all the way up here. And so this is the amount that you buy, but the optimal amount for your welfare is actually up here. And the information gap, the fact that you're underestimating how good this is for you, is causing you to underconsume it. Devastating. And so this would be the case of a merit good because it has more merit than you think. And again, we could subsidize it to try and make up this gap to try and get you to buy it more, or we could do a public information campaign to say, hey guys, exercising is really good. Just when Boris Johnson stood up and he said, my friends, I was too fat. And he was trying to make the case of, he had a bad time of COVID because he, well, partly his risk factor was increased because of his weight. And sorry. And he was trying to close information gaps and say, well, look, if you really want to value your long-term health, pardon me, you may be underestimating how much this is. I'm sorry, guys. You may be underestimating how much this is costing you. And so information allows people to then actually raise their demand, or in the case of a demerit good, lower their demand to make it closer to the true benefit that they get. And I think that it's generally good too. I'm sorry. I think I clearly didn't pay enough attention to the need to care about your health. I was merit gooding it away. They clearly there's when you've got information gaps and you remedy an information gap, then suddenly people are much better placed to buy things in proportion to how much they actually benefit them. So I think it's a very important fix to do in markets. Gosh, because it's a very easy fix in the grand scheme of things, and it can solve things quite well. This is a slight tangent, but I think, and other people would agree and would also argue this, that the issue with low fertility is partly because of information gaps, because people want more kids. People's stated goal of how many kids they want is higher than the number of kids they have. And so this seems to suggest either that people are overinflating how much they want kids, or that they are somehow not, they've got the wrong idea of actually how to get them. And I would say the fact that people expect to have larger number of children than they actually have suggests, well, if you expect to have children, then you're not just saying in a survey, I would ideally like loads of kids. You're actually saying, hey, I expect to have this many. That to me implies serious demand. So, for example, in Ireland, there was a survey on this in 2011. Young Irish adults expected to have 2.7 kids. They expected to have 2.5 kids, and their stated ideal was 2.7. So I say, well, 2.5 then looks like a good indicator of, hey, you actually wanted this number. And in reality, fertility rates in Ireland are down to 1.5 now. So that's the young adults now approaching of 2011, now in their 40s or so. And early 40s. Well, anyway, and it's therefore that suggests that there's some sort of information gap going on. So there are gaps in people's expectations of what gets you kids, etc., and what actually does. That can also be thought of as a sort of market failure as a result of information gaps, and maybe people are underestimating how easy it is to get your life in order in good time while postponing it. Anyway, that's a slight digression because obviously it's a bit of a complicated example, but it does also partly say, hey, information gaps seem to be causing inefficiencies in terms of actually helping people to achieve what they really want, and the better that they can be answered, the better that we can achieve optimal social welfare, that people can attain what they actually want.